All right, Aspire leaders, welcome back and Happy New Year. It's crazy that we are now into 2025, but so excited for my guest today. He's just got a ton of experience in a whole variety of different ways, and I am super excited because I have no idea where this conversation is going to go, but I know it's going to be fulfilling. It's going to have jam-packed with wisdom and insights for our aspiring and current leaders. So with that, Greg, Bennick, thank you so much for being on Aspire to Lead.
Thank you for having me. This is great. I'm really excited to see where this goes as well. There's lots of angles we could take.
Yeah. So before we begin on the conversation and your new book, I would just love for you just to share a little bit about yourself and your leadership journey.
Sure. Well, I grew up with two parents who were both very unconventional leaders, or at least embodied a leadership mentality. My mom changed her career intentionally every 10 years so that her life would constantly remain fresh and she wouldn't get locked in a rut. So I was inspired by that. And then my father was a corporate guy, but at the same time always maintained a mindset of innovative thinking and challenging the status quo wherever he happened to be. So I grew up with people who, and I should actually add about my father, that he eventually quit a job that he was very unhappy with and worked for himself and kind of took the initiative on his own. So both my parents were leaders in their own right of themselves. And I think that leadership has to start with ourselves. Of course, we have to be initiated from within in a way. So that was my upbringing. I grew up in Connecticut, and I've lived across the country in Seattle, Washington ever since. And I've traveled around the world at this point speaking, and I think the count is up to 27 different countries and speaking to all sorts of audiences. So I've had a really fascinating life, as it were, so far. I'm looking forward to seeing what the next few decades include.
That's funny because I had a very similar childhood with specifically my dad changing careers often. For you, though, was that just like a everyday thing? It was kind of instilled in you that change might occur and that it's okay to go from one thing to another?
Yeah, I mean, my parents were renegade thinkers ultimately at the end of the day, and the renegade thinkers within confines of a degree of normalcy, right? They weren't renegade thinkers like I didn't grow up in a backpack as they were traversing the Appalachian Trail, or we weren't walking across India and drinking out of streams or something, as I was growing up. I mean, we lived, a somewhat normal-ish life, but at the same time, you've got two people who are constantly thinking and rethinking. How could this be better? How could we do more? How could we be more innovative with our own lives? Case in point, my parents just moved from where they had been living for decades to an entirely new state, sold their house, bought a new house at 84 years old. The point is, they did it just to have an adventure, constantly challenging themselves to think in different ways. That is something a leader does all the time. Leadership is rooted in innovation, and they were innovative and continue to be in their own lives.
I love that model. That's perfect. All right. Well, I'm chomping at the bit, Greg, to talk about your book, and Great. I'm going to throw it up on the screen here for those who are watching on YouTube. Thank you for, obviously watching on YouTube, but make sure you're hitting that subscribe and like button. And if you have any questions for Greg too, make sure you're throwing that in the comment section. But your book, Reclaim the Moment, 7 Strategies to Build a Better Now. Love the title, but I also love something that's stated in this book, which it's keeping your eye on the knife. And that term I haven't heard before, and it piques my curiosity. So can you just explain the concept and then share some practical ways our leaders can improve, their focus for themselves and their teams?
Sure. It's a juggling metaphor, and there's a bit of a backstory. One of my first performances as a young person wasn't as a keynote speaker. It was as a comedy juggler. And I was in my small town in Connecticut, and I was about to do a juggling performance. I was maybe 13 years old. And I had this tremendous idea as the entire town was gathered around me. I knew that was going to be the case, and I thought it would be amazing if I took one of my mom's kitchen knives, and I brought out a few of them, and I held them up. I picked the biggest one, and I said to the audience, "Ladies and gentlemen, these knives are sharp," and I would cut through a carrot that I was holding. Well, in front of the audience, rather than just say, "These knives are sharp," and cut through that carrot, I said, "Ladies and gentlemen, these knives are," and I kept on every word slicing through that carrot that I was holding in my hand to show how sharp these knives were, not realizing I was getting closer and closer to my finger because I was so wrapped up in my own ego and the whole town watching me and how exciting this was. "Ladies and gentlemen, these knives are sharp," and cut right into my finger in front of a live audience. So the point of keep your eyes on the knife is think and focus on what you really need to be thinking and focusing on, rather than getting lost in ego and the people standing around you and how they're going to clap and how they're going to respond. It's a juggling metaphor in that, what is the most mission critical task that's facing you right now? The thing that, if it falls or fails, does the most damage or has the most impact. And inevitably, there's an answer in every moment. For right now, I'm sure there's something that you and I are going to do after this podcast that might range from eating pizza to going to the gym to walking in the rain. But this is the conversation. This is the moment. This is the knife right now. So I think that returning to the most mission critical thing, element, task that's in front of us in each moment and really reassessing what that is essential for productivity. So keep your eyes on the knife is a juggling metaphor. What's your knife? What is your company's knife, your organization's knife in this moment that you really need to be focusing on?
Man, that ego piece is so huge. I know, especially for our young leaders, I was one that got too involved with that of wanting to solve all the issues and wanting to be Superman and, make sure that I was solving all the problems and taking away from other people. And what I found was obviously that was not the right thing to do.
Yeah, and it's easy to get swept up in that. We've been enculturated into that. The idea, social media, which I'm part of social media. I love social media. We all love social media, but it puts us at the center of the world and bases everyone's opinions as the reason to be, basically, right? Do they like us? Do they like what we posted? Do they, so when we feed into that, it feeds into us and it becomes this cycle that can be very distracting. So keeping your eyes on the knife, separating yourself a bit from the ego, I think is very important to do.
Great point. All right, I'm going to transition to something else that was a strategy, but also a saying that kind of caught my attention, which was leap into the dark. And you had talked about change and exploring new ideas with your parents. And I think that's a great, leadership quality. But I'm thinking too, there's probably got to be a lot of fear in that for some of our leaders and our listeners right now, as far as thinking about changes and exploring those new ideas. So, for those who potentially are covered in fear, how can they overcome that? And what are some steps to go into the unknown?
Well, I think that stepping into the unknown is really what leaping into the dark is all about. And I think about creative process where when you start to create something, this conversation is a perfect example. We don't know where it's going to go. Well, 99 times out of 100, you're not going to be killed by the choices that you make when you leap into the dark as a leader. You're not going to actually literally die. You're probably not going to lose your job, because I think that leaping into the dark doesn't mean that you decide you're going to fire everybody or give everybody a 200% raise. You're going to work within the realm of rationality. But I do think sometimes that we miss out on opportunities that might be smaller that have a bigger impact. Starting and cultivating a culture of asking people how they're doing, starting and cultivating a culture of having other people's opinions actually matter and listening to one another. These can be examples of leaping into the dark, into the unknown, into new territory, into new ways of interacting with others that might be a little more horizontal in terms of their hierarchical structure rather than vertical. These are really important ideas to consider. Like, what are things that we haven't done before that we might just try? We might dabble in it a little bit, and sure, dabbling and trying isn't leaping, but we have to start somewhere. And your question is about if people are terrified, right? If they're really afraid, dabble a little bit, leap later. But the idea ultimately is to leap, to step or leap into the unknown and see where you land, because chances are pretty good that all will not fall apart if you take a risk and try something new. I think people are hungry for innovation. I mean, we as creatures are constantly evolving. So when leaders take steps towards evolving and they take some risks along the way, people appreciate that, and it re-energizes teams and creates stronger organizations.
For sure. And I was just thinking, especially in education, it's such a slow process, and innovation is going at such a low rate versus outside in business world and some of these other spaces where it seems to be going at a rapid pace. So yeah, for our leaders, definitely take that leap. And then, you don't have to do that alone either. I mean, you could probably get some other folks to take those baby steps with you. And
that could be the leap, right? The leap could be, if you feel like you've been alone in your process of being a leader, invite other people onto the team, onto the leadership team, or inspire others to be leaders so that people are empowered and feel a sense of ownership or a sense of responsibility and a sense of engagement as well. And all of a sudden, you're not going to be alone anymore.
All right. I keep touching on terms in the book. This is phenomenal. I love this. So the reverberation effect. It's a mouthful, but I want you to explain what that is, and
For
then maybe how that can translate in the world of education with our leaders.
Absolutely. So, I've always, and we all know about a ripple effect. Stone drops in a
Yeah.
pond, the ripples emanate outward from there. The part about a ripple effect, which is a great idea, metaphor, visual image, the part that always kind of sort of irked me a little bit is the fact that the ripples fade by the edge of the pond. So I started thinking about reverberation. I started thinking about what happens if something is sent out into the world and that point of inspiration is heard, amplified, sent back, sent a different direction, and then sent back, sent in a couple different directions, and then other directions, and then sent back. And the idea actually builds over time rather than fades by the edge of the pond. So I offer ideas in the book about reverberation and ways to create a culture of reverberation. And it involves active listening. It involves a deconstruction of the ego in a way, because if I share an idea with you and I say, you know what, check this out. What if your podcast was entirely without video from now on? And you go, whoa, 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 whoa. Or maybe I'm so connected to that idea that I can't imagine you'd say, whoa, 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 whoa. We have to decrease our ego engagement with our ideas so that I throw an idea out and maybe you say, you know what, I love that idea, or I can't stand that idea. And we have conversations about it. And maybe in those conversations, that idea develops and grows. And it turns out maybe the video is a great idea. Maybe there's something else we could do differently in the podcast. The point is having teams that are actively engaged with people who feel like they matter and that their contribution matters, so that when they share an idea back, they know that they're going to be heard, they know they're going to be appreciated. This is like rocket fuel for teams. And reverberation means that people feel as though their voice and their opinion and their contribution to an organization or a mission statement or an idea that it actually matters. So the idea of reverberation is to share ideas and have those ideas be bouncing back and forth. And I've got a diagram in the book that explains that, and I go into a whole chapter about it. But really, ultimately, it's about feeling that we matter and having people feel that they matter. Because we can pay lip service to a mission statement or a goal or an ambition, but when people are actively on board and feel like they're active and engaged contributors, all of a sudden it's a game changer.
Oh, for sure. That's a really cool metaphor. I haven't heard anything like that, and I like the idea of it not fading away, but getting amplified,
Yeah.
and making it stronger. So, all right, I've talked to you, Greg, prior to us pushing record. You've said a few things that have piqued my interest even more so, and I know there's a ton of stories that you have. So your book includes like a ton of personal stories of your life and your career. Would you mind just sharing maybe a specific story that shaped your understanding of peak performance and how it connected to building a better now?
Absolutely. Well, I can give you an example. It just happened just recently. When we are engaged in a moment and we are on our game, on top of our game, let's just say. And I don't mean on top of our game like we're a Super Bowl quarterback or an Olympian, because there's very few of us who are actually going to get there. I shouldn't say us. I'm not a Super Bowl quarterback or an Olympian, far from it. But when we're
yeah,
exactly, when we're engaged in what we're doing and we're feeling good about it and we're present, and we're rehearsed and we're ready and we're active, it's pretty amazing how we can perform. So here's an example that literally happened 3 weeks ago. I was on stage in Oklahoma City. I was in front of about 1,000 people at a big keynote speaking event, right? And I had, the IMAG screens and the whole, huge stage, a big deal. And it wasn't a big deal because I was there. The event was a big deal. I was honored to be a part of it. And much of what was happening was teleprompted that day. So I'm on stage in front of 1,000 people. And if I look this way, teleprompter. If I look this way, teleprompter. Look out at the audience, teleprompter. And everything, all the remarks that I had were teleprompted. And the client wanted it that way. Well, I got up in front of the audience and I was ready to go. And I was excited about the topic. And as I started to speak, I was maybe a minute into this thing. The teleprompter went out, just started spinning. So imagine you're looking out in the distance, teleprompter just spinning. There's no way that you could possibly read it. So I took a moment's pause, and the teleprompter scrolled back to where they thought I was, and it was not where I was. And I decided in that moment that the very best thing I could do was land back on my own feet, not worry about the technology, but instead be confident in my abilities. And I literally looked out at the audience and I said, you know what? I'm right here with you right now. Can you feel that? And everyone went, yeah. And I said, because they could tell that something had gone wrong. There was that moment's pause where they knew something technologically had gone wrong. I said, you know what? I'm right here with you right now. How about we have a conversation? And I just went for it. Now, the people who were on the tech side, as it turns out, were on headsets going, what's he doing? Where's he going? What's happening? What is this? What's he doing? What's he doing? And what one of my dear friends, who is one of the lead tech guys, said to everybody on headset, don't worry about it. He's got this. And I had this, and I just spoke from the heart, right? That's peak performance. It doesn't mean you throw, it doesn't mean 100-yard rushing plays and passing plays and every single thing's a touchdown, right? It means that you just do what you do and do it well in the moment. And that was a moment where I could have relied on the technology, waited for the technology, it crumbled and walked off stage. But instead, I just thought to myself, didn't even think. I just went back into go mode, into flow mode, for lack of a better word, and just talked and spoke and connected. That was a great moment of peak performance, I think. And I think that people do themselves a disservice when they think that peak performance has to mean they're the greatest pole vaulter who's ever lived, the fastest human being, the this, the that. It can simply mean you do what you do and you do it well. So I highly recommend that people sink back into what they know and find confidence in themselves in moments, because I think we've all got that potential without a doubt.
I think the tech guys would have been really upset at me. I don't think I could have done the teleprompter. I think I would have just gone off script right away.
Okay, well then, and that's the thing, right? Teleprompter is tricky, because if I was reading right now and I was reading and following along, I mean, teleprompter is an art form in and of itself, but I have, yeah, it is, right? And you can rehearse and rehearse and rehearse, but if you're ready and you know the material, you're just going to be ready, and you're going to be ready to perform and ready to speak. And I think that that's all, it's metaphorical, right? If you know what you do and you know how to interact and know how to lead, then when the moment comes, you're not going to have to result or revert to a rule book in your mind. You're just going to do it. People want to be connected with and listened to. They want to feel like they matter. And when you inspire people to feel like they matter and you really believe it, they're on board. And that's peak performance, in my opinion.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, that courage piece too. I think that word just kind of got stuck in my brain, just especially as a leader, you have to do a lot of uncomfortable things that are going to stretch you as a human being.
Yeah.
And you really do need to have that courage to move forward and be your best self.
And speaking to your leap into the dark moment, okay, so let's be realistic. The moment with the teleprompters didn't result in success because I'm so cool, I'm so awesome, I'm so great, I'm so talented. Here's what happened. Teleprompter went crazy. That little moment that the audience was cognizant of was me going, what? And like, what about the tech? And then in my head going, what? As in, what happens now? That's the leap into the dark moment. And instead of going, hey, everybody, whoa, 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 teleprompter's broken. I don't know what to do here. Just to say, hi, I'm right here with you. You feel that? And then just see where that goes. That was a cool moment. Like, I'm really excited about that. So, it's that moment of what to hold on one second. Hi. And then you're off and running. The leap doesn't have to be you're on fire leaping from a building into a pit of vipers. It can literally just be hi. That could be a leap into the dark.
All right. So I want to touch on something that's a pretty big topic right now. And I think a lot of educators and leaders are feeling this, which is just the mental health component of things, the stress. Obviously, a lot of people feel like they have a lot on their plate and they're being stretched to a point where they're crumbling. And so some of the things in your book that you highlighted is talking about encouraging joy and laughter and happiness. And I would love for you to just talk about that as far as potential strategies for peak performance for our listeners.
It's essential, right? I mean, we live in an increasingly intense world. I talk about it all throughout the book. There's a section in the book about Guy Debord, who wrote The Society of the Spectacle in the 1960s. And Debord talked about the ways in which we are consumed by spectacle, by the images around us, that we don't actually end up living our lives because we're consumed by the spectacle that's around us. Meaning, I don't have to have adventures. There's images of adventure all around me. Think about how we scroll through our phones with the images of what other people are doing. Well, what about when, even the term doom scrolling, what about when most of the images we're seeing in the news and otherwise are intense or challenging or overwhelming? it's essential that we have to return to some form of even just smiling at one another. I mean, I talk in the book at length about the fact that I've been talking about kindness for a few years since the pandemic now, and speaking to everybody from young people to adults and older people about kindness. And it's been pretty remarkable how strongly people connect with the idea about kindness in my possibility of kindness keynotes. That tells me something. If people were saying, yeah, we don't care, that would be information. But the information is that people care about kindness and care about laughter. And that's why in the keynotes that I do, that, I'm always doing something bizarre. Like, if search the web, there's pictures of me balancing a chair on my face or juggling the machete or whatever it might be to keep people engaged and interested and interested. It's essential that we laugh with one another. It's essential that we find common ground. And I mention it in the book. I've traveled all over the world, jungles of Haiti, Eastern Siberia, you name it, I've been there. And there are commonalities amongst us all. We want to feel that we matter. And ultimately, we all enjoy laughing, wherever it might be. I mean, it's possible, and I've been there, to laugh with audiences in Siberia and laugh with audiences in Haiti and laugh with audiences in Canada and South America and Africa. People have these commonalities. It affirms our humanity and our connection with one another. And that makes us feel that we are part of something meaningful. Even just laughing with somebody else can have an amazing impact. So it's something people can bring to culture, whatever that might be, organizational culture, what have you, as leaders, that can really inspire people. Just figure out a way to get people laughing. And there's ideas in the book. And if people are interested, I'm always happy to brainstorm. So people can be in touch anytime.
Awesome. No, for sure. And I want to just highlight that for those who are watching on YouTube, I've had Greg's website up constantly as our conversation is going, intentionally, because I do want you to go there and I want you to connect with him as soon as possible. If you have any questions or need some strategies, or you want Greg to come out and speak, and I want to touch on that. You've talked a little bit so far in our conversation about just some of the things that you talk about, but when you're going out and doing a keynote, are there some popular topics that you like to speak on or are passionate about that that you do often?
Absolutely. Well, Build a Better Now, which is half the title of the book, comes up often.
Yeah.
How do we build the future that we want by building a better now? And what I like to do is work with clients and whoever it might be who is contacting me, ask them, okay, where are the roadblocks right now? And how do you perceive getting past those roadblocks? And then when I go in to do the keynote, of course, the work is customized. The work is essentially wrapped around their culture so that they feel as though the solutions, and they don't even have to feel as though, they know that the solutions that we've come up with are ones that are applicable to their people and their mission. So the Build a Better Now keynote is popular, but also, I've spoken to groups before about speaking and about effective speaking and how to speak effectively, how to use our voices and our words in ways which are inspirational. That for leaders, I think, is powerful. And I've done half-day trainings and full-day trainings on both of those topics. So yeah, I would absolutely love to hear from people anytime, whether they're interested in hiring me, of course, but also just with ideas. I think that any leader recognizes that any culture of events that might come up in the future all start with relationships at the beginning. So I'd be happy to hear from people anytime.
Yeah, I love it. All right, I got to ask this because I was perusing your bio on your website and film producer was listed. So I just got to know, just my own curiosity here, what kind of things are you doing in regards to the world of film?
Sure. For the last 20 years or so, and this is from time to time, not consistently every single day, every week, but I've produced a documentary film. So there's a documentary film that a friend of mine and I produced 20 years ago called Flight from Death, The Quest for Immortality, about ways that our fear of our demise impacts our psychology. And it's a fascinating and very uplifting film, ultimately, about the ways that we behave. Why do we behave the way that we do as human beings? And how can we improve our interactions with one another? And it ties into all the things that we've talked about so far. So documentary films have really been something I've always been interested in and just fascinated at, the communicative dynamic there. So documentary films, Flight from Death, The Quest for Immortality, I would start there. That's a really fascinating film at this point. Even after 20 years, it's really great.
Wonderful. All right. So just a reminder, the title of the book, Reclaim the Moment, 7 Strategies to Build a Better Now. If you're watching on YouTube, Greg's been so kind to actually put the cover on the screen for you. So beautiful cover. Definitely check that out. I'll have the link in the show notes for you to access that very, very easily, and highly recommend the book. So grab that as soon as possible. With that, Greg, I'd love to ask you something that I ask all my guests, which is an actionable item for those who are listening today. So if there's something our leaders can do tomorrow or next week to enhance their leadership journey, what would you recommend?
I would say without any doubt in the world, start with kindness. Start with thinking in terms of kindness towards others. And in doing so, it's not just about smiling at people. It's about inviting them into relationship. It's about active listening. That's going to result from the connection that comes from being kind to other people. And I would say that when we are kind to others, we immediately begin hearing them differently. We begin relating to them differently. We begin working with them differently. So all of a sudden, you've got teamwork, you've got leadership, you've got relationships all in one. And it starts with just not seeing people as adversaries, but seeing people as allies. Even that just functionally basic idea can lead to breakthrough results.
Awesome. All right, we've touched on your website. I'm going to throw it up on the screen one more time, Greg. But for those who are on social media, they may want to connect in different ways. How may they do that?
Sure. Find me on Instagram at Greg Bennick, spelled GregBennick. Search me if you like on Facebook. Search me certainly on LinkedIn, GregBennick. And I'd be happy to connect. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, what have you. And yeah, definitely through the website, because the website has more information about me and my offerings and whatnot, and information about the book as well. But I'd love to hear from people anytime.
Yeah, definitely connect on social media, but for sure go to the website. Like I said, I've been there. There's a ton of resources on there. Plus, it gives you just a better understanding of all the things that Greg offers. So, highly recommend you go over there. With that, Greg, it has been a true joy to get to know you more today, to learn about your book. And I don't know, but I think this is just a perfect message going into 2025 of reclaiming our moment. I know most educators have been on a break here and are ready to go into the school year for 2025. And yeah, just focus on building a better now for yourself, for your students, for your community. And with that, thank you so much for joining me on Aspire to Lead.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it very much.